Welcome everyone to Screams Underwater. I mean, After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Tim.
My man.
we should do an underwater episode, Tim.
Oh, yeah.
Get the equipment to go underwater, go into a tank, and record the podcast in our swimsuits. Just be like, so what did you think? We have to pick obviously a water themed horror movie, otherwise it's stupid. Mm-hmm. Oh no, we do it ironically. We do a movie set in a desert. We go underwater and we review a movie set in the desert. That's the idea.
There you go. All those famous desert horror movies.
There's a few. Hills Have Eyes is set in a desert. We've already done it, admittedly, but that one counts.
Yeah, I guess.
All right, well, there you go. So yes, this is a horror movie podcast. We get together, we've watched a horror movie, we talk about it. It's quite that simple. And coming up on today's show, obviously, like the next several episodes, barring a few like individual things, because there's one coming up in a couple episodes time that is very much not a 2021 movie, but for the most part we're spending the time catching up in various 2021 movies that we should do. And that includes in the Patreon bonus episodes. Last week for patrons, only $1 or more gets you access, but we did Werewolves Within, so if you want some extra episodes, go to Patreon, get an extra one per month.
It's like we always say, 2022 is the year of 2021. That's our slogan this year.
Do you know what the silliest thing about that statement? And there's a lot that's silly about it. But the silliest
tell me.
thing about it is that you say it's like we always say, when realistically we only could have been saying that for a total of 2 weeks.
That's true. Mm-hmm.
Because we're 2 weeks in, give or take, to 2022.
Give or take, yeah.
Give or take. It's going to be a long episode, isn't it? So this is The Deep House. It's really quite a simple premise. There is a haunted house, but it's underwater. Print money. You'd hope it prints money, because while it doesn't feel like a super big budget movie, I have to imagine the underwater stuff makes it bigger budget than most films of this style, right? If this was underwater, this would be so much cheaper than whatever it cost. I don't know how much it cost, but whatever it did cost, it would have been cheaper if it wasn't underwater. That's my assertion.
Well, I mean, they probably should have just, filmed everything on a studio and then just added some type of water filter.
Oh, that sounds awful, Timmy. That sounds awful. Do you not think we'd notice?
Well, you never know.
Yeah, I mean, the premise of the film, and we'll obviously start spoiler free as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we get to spoilers. The premise is quite simple. We have a couple, Ben and Tina, who
YouTubers just like us.
Yes, I'm not gonna lie. There's a scene where he says casually, "This next thing we're going to look at is our ticket to 1 million views." And as someone who
I was thinking the same thing.
And as someone who's on YouTube, and as someone who's trying to think of ways to reach a bigger audience, that line made me cringe so much.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say, "Hey, we've had a video that reached 1 million views." So.
Oh, we have. That's true. We did.
We're part of the million club.
We have come spectacularly not even close to doing it a second time since, but yes, technically we did have one video hit 1 million views.
Oh, we need Eli Roth to make a new movie.
Shout out to the Green Inferno for apparently being having such a passionate fan base that they all click on the review of it. So thank you very much. Very old episode as well. I know. Yeah. It's very weird, but yes. But as well as weird things where people talk about relatability, right? And like connecting to characters and stories because they're like you, right? And we talk about that in a lot of different facets. We talk about it in kind of silly ways, we talk about it in emotional ways, and we talk about it in more serious ways like diversity. We were talking about how certain groups of people haven't had representation on screen. But to basically throw all that under the bus, I'm going to make this very clear. I don't like YouTubers and podcasters in movies, and it's like it should be the most relatable thing to me, and it's not. It makes me cringe. I don't want it. It's too close.
Well, actually, it's funny because this was actually something I was thinking about too, and what I was kind of thinking about was like the idea that it's kind of annoying because like the YouTuber personality or whatever, it is kind of perfect to like put in like any of these horror scenarios because it's something that's very easy to get someone in like a situation where they shouldn't be. It's like, oh yeah, well of course they're exploring this haunted house or this insane asylum or doing this ritual that, you know, a normal person wouldn't do, but you know, because it's a YouTuber, you know, you instantly have that idea of like, oh yeah, this person is doing it for the notoriety, for the clicks and everything. So it is like a very easy premise to throw in,
and believably as well, might I add, because some people on YouTube do weird stuff.
Absolutely.
Like, you know, it's not like silly, and I mean it's silly what they do, but it's not silly to say that people would do it. Yeah.
So no, it's totally like it's annoying because it is something that is kind of perfect for horror movies, but at the same time, similar to what you just said, it also annoys the crap out of me. Like, I don't think there's ever been, like, I can't think of one horror movie where, the main character has been like a YouTuber or a podcaster or whatever, and it, you know, they've actually been like a likable person. Like, they're always that annoying, like, stupid person that's always like just chasing the thing to the detriment of like their safety or their friends or their loved ones, and just acting extremely unreasonable, and it's always annoying.
And it's not, I don't think it's impossible to do it and make them likable. I actually think it is possible. I just, but they never do it. They always go for kind of the same self-centered kind of thing. Like, give me, you know how like in, I mean, it's obviously not the same sort of thing, but just to give an example, like, if you think of Ghostbusters, right, early on, when like Venkman's trying to convince Ray to mortgage his house so they can do this crazy Ghostbusting idea, and he doesn't want to do it, and he's like, this is a terrible idea, we shouldn't do this, but Venkman's just kind of like coercing him into it. But it's kind of likeable. I mean, obviously it's not a nice thing to do in real life, but it's likeable and funny because he's being kind of cheeky. Like, just, you know, have the character be likeable because they're cheeky, right? But there's nothing like that with most of these characters in movies. They tend to be what you think of when you think of the word influencer.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's always like the worst, like, you know, ultimate expression of that kind of person where it's just this archetype where, you know, that you can tell they're just like fame hungry and they don't really care or believe in what they're doing or about safety or whatever. So it just never makes them that likable, and also just doesn't really make them that interesting because just, you know, it's something you've seen a million times before.
Admittedly, I wouldn't say you get that vibe from the podcasters in Halloween 2018, but they had their own problems. You know, basically inciting and causing most of what happens in the movie.
Absolutely.
So yes, but anyway, so this couple who are making videos, there's a little example at the start where they're at like a house or like an old building of some kind in I think I want to say it was Ukraine. Maybe it wasn't Ukraine. It was somewhere in Europe. Right. And it's just like a sort of example of what they do so that we have some context when we get into the main part of the story. And they are led to a house that is preserved underwater, and they dive. The movie is just over 80 minutes long. When they're about to go down into the water, they say they've got about an hour of oxygen, which neatly kind of lines up with, you know, what's left of the movie. So you know that it's going to be like a tight, like, fit at the end, you know, for air, regardless of what the plot from then on is going to be. That's the basic gist. Obviously, get to the house and there's, you know, creepy shenanigans happen. I'll just leave it at that for the sake of this. Some people refer to this as found footage, and it is kind of partially, but I wouldn't really call it a found footage movie because it does cut to it still has regular shots. Quite a lot. One of the interesting things about the underwater stuff is that because they've got like a drone that's sort of doing like a wide shot of both of them, it's because like actual shooting movies underwater is so similar to what this drone looks like as found footage, it's actually indistinguishable from the regular movie shots at a certain point. And so unless you're really thinking about, is that the drone that they've got that's making that shot, or is it just a movie shot, you actually don't really notice a lot of it. I mean, they're also holding cameras, they've got POV cameras, and it does cut to that, but it intermingles it, you know, it, which is, I think, better. It is the best of both worlds. You don't have to always constantly use the shaky cam stuff, but you do get the benefits of having the creepy POV at times, and so on and so on. So just there's an interesting bit in the filming style, as it were. But anyway, without any further ado, I shall ask Tim the question. From the acclaimed directors of Inside, which I've not seen, people swear it's good. What I have seen, though, is Leatherface, the recent Texas Chainsaw prequel.
Mm-hmm.
Not to be confused with the upcoming sequel to the original.
Yeah. Or the prequel to the reboot, or...
Yes. Or the last time we had a sequel to the original that ignored the sequels. Now we're getting another sequel to the original that's ignoring all the sequels, including the last sequel that ignored this.
Okay, so that one was called Leatherface, right? And then
their prequel is called Leatherface, yeah.
Yeah, but then wasn't the third Texas Chainsaw Massacre, wasn't that called Texas Chainsaw 3 Leatherface?
All the way around that, they pulled an Evil Dead 3. It was Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 3.
Okay, so there is a Leatherface, and then there's also Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 3.
Yes.
Okay, it's not confusing.
It's, do you know what? It's almost. I'd say it's probably worse than the Rambo franchise at this point, just because there's so many of them that it's just making it more confusing. But yeah, Rambo's pretty guilty of this as well.
I do genuinely wonder, with some of these franchise movies, how many of the other movies have they actually seen? It doesn't always feel like, they're really trying hard to keep things nice and sensical and uphold the mythology.
When it comes to a sequel that's ignoring all the other sequels and it's just a sequel to the original film, you could argue they don't need to. The only one they need to have seen is the original, because they're not doing a sequel to the rest of them. So they can ignore Dennis Hopper with the dueling chainsaw fight. They can ignore Viggo Mortensen. They can ignore Matthew McConaughey and the government conspiracy behind the family thing.
I mean, really, all I'm asking is just a quick look at IMDb and maybe just say, "Oh, hey, man, let's change our title." It's a little weird, but
just call it Texas Chainsaw Massacre 8 or 9, whatever we're on. Actually, I'd have to go back and count. Yeah. Lost track. Mm-hmm. So, Tim, did you like the Deep House?
So I actually was really excited for this. If you would have asked me, before I watched it, I would have said, "Oh yeah, this is going to be a must scream. This is." Something I'm really looking forward to. It's a mix of basically kind of two of my favorite subgenres. I love a haunted house movie and I love aquatic horror. And so when I heard this premise, I synapses started going off in my brain. All this stuff was clicking into place.
I am so upset that you said premise, not synopsis, before you said synapses.
Synopsis.
The synopsis with my synapses fire.
But I thought it sounded so cool, and then the reviews started coming out and they were pretty middling. I don't think anyone was really saying that it was horrible, but it wasn't a lot of people that seemed to be raving about it. But I was still excited, and then like you said, I have seen Inside, and I did like. It's been a while since I've seen it, but when I saw it, I thought it was, quite good. It's it's a French extreme horror movie, which those aren't the kind of ones I'm usually eager to watch and rewatch all the time. But I still thought it was quite good, and but yeah, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie they did, oh boy, that was not good. So I would say at this point, I'm not super excited when I hear about what they're doing, but I still give them, the benefit of the doubt. So I do gotta talk real quick about how goddamn hard it was to watch this movie. And I don't mean the act of watching it, when I started the movie. I meant how it took me probably at least half an hour to get the movie. So it was on this channel called Epix. I'm sure you know what Epix is. Everyone's favorite channel.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm super familiar with Epix.
Which so I didn't have Epix, but it is something that I've been wanting to get because they have the Chapelwaite TV show. I don't know if you've heard of that. No? Yes.
No, vaguely
It's a so it's based on a Stephen King short story, which was a prequel to Salem's Lot, and it was they just did a TV show of it last year starring Adrian Brody, which I heard it's pretty good. It's a bit of a slow burn, but people say it has some pretty good atmosphere and stuff.
And there's a new Salem's Lot coming this year, so
good timing. But I could have just rented the movie, yeah, like normal for $5, but I figured, wait, I want to watch Chapelwaite, so it's streaming on Epix, and then I can also, if I get the channel, then I can also watch Chapelwaite and blah blah. So first, of course, it's not on that you can't get the app on PlayStation because it's like PlayStation has like 2 or 3 like apps. I feel like every time I want a new one, it's not on there. So
consoles are always last to get the media apps. Yeah. You'll get Netflix, you'll get Apple, you get Amazon, and you'll get like maybe Hulu or whatever, and then it's like desolate.
I think like I don't know, like 3 or 4 years ago, I tweeted to Shudder on Twitter. Obviously, I was like, "Hey Shudder, like are you ever gonna have the app for PlayStation?" And they were like, "We're working on it," but then like it never came to be. And then it's one of those weird tweets where like randomly like 2 years later, I'll still get people replying to it, and it's always like angry people being like, "How comes the app's not on PlayStation yet? You're lying." And I'm like, why am I involved in this?
It got controversial because like 2 years ago they added an Xbox app, like because they never used to have Xbox either, but they added an Xbox one. I was like, wait, Xbox has got it now? How dare you?
So anyway, so I had to go to I do have Apple TV, so usually stuff is available on there. So I look up Epix, and there's you can either download the Epix channel or the Epix app, which. What's the difference? I don't.
Yeah, what is the difference? They're both apps. They're still an app if it's on Apple.
Yeah, I don't understand it. So I forget which one I chose, but I downloaded it. So then I go into and it appears like as an app button on the screen, which I guess the same thing would have done for it if it was a channel, whatever. So I go into it, and when I go into it, it says, "All right, you have to activate this device. So go online to this website." They do those things. You go to the website and then you type in the activation code.
Yeah.
So now I have to go to my computer, and I go to the website, I type in the activation code, and then it says like select your TV provider. And I was like, all right, well, I didn't buy this on my TV provider. I bought on my Apple TV, whatever. But I do have a cable subscription because it's bundled with our internet. So
yeah, of course.
So I typed that in. And then it's like, okay, like set up your Epix account. And then they asked me for like my email address, my name, and like zip code. And I put that in, and it says like your email. Yeah. But then when I put that in, it says your email address and password don't match. I'm like, well, there's nowhere. You didn't ask me to enter a password. Like you just asked me to enter my name and email. So I tried like, I was like looking at this computer screen with like 3 things to enter. And I was like, what do you want me to do? And like there's nothing to enter. So I was like, okay. And then I think I looked up something online, and they were saying like or when I tried to like go back and look at other stuff on Epix, and then it was saying to contact your cable provider or whatever. So I was like, okay, maybe I have to add it to my cable package. So then I logged into my cable website, and there's an option to like, add this premium channel for like $5 or whatever. And then eventually I found Epix, so I was like, all right, I'll add this, I'll buy it for the month and then cancel it after I watch everything. So so now I've had to download the app, and then after you download the app, you have to go to the website, and then when you go to the website, you realize you have to go to your cable provider and add the channel. So I've done that.
Which makes, just for the record, like now that you've switched to just doing it through your cable provider, the downloading of the app and trying to get that working is all for nothing. Like that's all just scrapped. So I did that, and then I'm like, okay, cool. So we should be all set, right? So then I go back to the app, and now that I'm like logged in with my cable provider and I added it through my cable or whatever, it lets me create an account on Epix. So I'm like, okay, now I'm in. The app is activated. I can watch whatever. I click on it. As soon as I click on it, it says, in order to enjoy like Epic's programming, like contact your cable provider, and or for a quick ad, go to channel 2495. And I'm like, wait, I mean, I just added it with my cable provider, right? I'm logged in through my cable credentials, so I shouldn't have to do this, right? And then I have to go back to the cable website, and then I'm looking at that, and it's like, oh no, yeah, thank you for your purchase. You've added, this blah blah Epix.
so I'm messing around with the Epic's website for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever, trying to figure out why I can't watch it, and clicking on other stuff, then looking at my account profile, trying to figure out anything I can do. Nothing's working. And then it said something about go to channel 2495 to do a quick ad. So I'm like, all right, so now actually I have to go to my cable and plug that in, because, you know, since I'm not over the age of 65, I don't actually watch live TV. So I have a cable box, but it's never plugged in. So I plugged it in, and then I get that set up. So I go to channel 2495, and you know what? There is no channel 2495.
What a tale this is turning out to be.
So I'm only sharing it because it's kind of funny, but like, if you were to see me last night, like I was like just ready to like start punching holes in the walls.
I'm surprised that I get a message saying, "Hey, do you want to do a different movie this week?" Like, I'm honestly shocked at this point.
Honestly, it was really, really close. And also, like, this was, it was about like I don't know, like maybe 10:30 or so, because I was gonna start earlier, but then me and my wife ended up watching, getting caught up on the Righteous Gemstones, which is really good season so far.
I haven't started a new season, but I did like season 1.
Yeah, I think you'll enjoy it. But anyway, so it's about, I don't know, like 10:30 or so. So I was hoping to, you know, start it at 10 and then, yeah, be done and in bed by like 11:30. Now it's like 10:30, like almost 11. So I'm like, all right, so now what? I'm going to be up to 12:31, which, yeah, I did have Monday off. But still, I don't want to be up super late, and which, you know, because I don't get as much sleep anymore with the baby. That's, you know, really late to me. Anyway, so I can't watch it on the cable, and then I go back to my cable website, and then there's an option to watch stuff on demand on the cable website. So I found Epix on demand on there, and I could watch the Deep House. So I was like, all right, okay, I can finally watch it, but my laptop is so tiny. I don't want to watch it on the laptop, so I was gonna cast it to my TV. Of course, there's no cast button to there. So I'm like, well, I'm not watching on my laptop. Like, if I have to, I'm just going to cancel this and just rent the movie. This is starting to get ridiculous. But then one last thing is, when I was looking at the demand stuff, it did mention on the website, you know, oh, here are like the cable stations for Epix or whatever is like 600 something, which is, again, I feel old because it's like, I remember, you know, pretty much when you watch stuff, it'd be like, you know, channel 24 or channel 32, like now it's everything, because there's all these like HD channels and stuff, so everything is like, yeah, 698. But so I finally go to Epix there, and lo and behold, for whatever reason, the Epix website doesn't seem to think that I'm subscribed to Epix, but I can watch it on my TV, which I don't know if I have to pay for it, because I've seen people online saying like, oh, if you have this cable provider, Epix is free. I have no idea. I have to look into it now, which is super annoying. But luckily, they did have a demand option on. It was like Epix on demand, channel 600 something, and I got it. And then I finally like was just so excited. I was so relieved. I'm like, finally, this nightmare is over. But also, I'm going into this movie with a little bit of an attitude.
Oh, like, yeah.
I was really excited to watch it, but no, not at all. Not at all.
It's not the movie's fault. Do you know what's so funny about that to me is that it's a good thing that, because I have not used cable in a long time.
It's the worst, yeah.
It's good that at least they do have on demand built into the movie channels and stuff, because I love the idea of you finally just like, okay, I'm just gonna have to find a channel, and it's like, yeah, Night House is on Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Like, shit, I'm gonna have to schedule my day to watch the Night House.
So with all that build up, I was super psyched for the movie. I was pulling my hair out trying to find a way to watch it. Finally sit down to watch it, and it's okay. I honestly, I'm kind of disappointed. I don't think it was horrible, but again, I love the premise. Like, it's a very simple premise, but the idea of an underwater haunted house, it's just something like I've never seen before, and it just instantly, you know, it's filling my head like, oh, there's so much cool like creepy stuff you can do that I've never really like seen before. And man, I just loved it so much. And when you watch it, it's just like, yeah, I mean, it's just a little generic. I thought the first half or so was pretty dull. Some creepy stuff does start happening, and there's definitely cool stuff that they do, and I'm sure it was probably pretty hard to film. So there's something to say that they're trying to do something different, and they must have exceeded on some level. But yeah, I mean, overall, I just found it to be a little underwhelming. Not horrible, it is fast, so 80 some minutes, so it's not like torturous or whatever. But yeah, like you were saying, the characters are not really that interesting. And yeah, I don't know, it's just a little underwhelmed. To be honest, I'm slightly disappointed, but I didn't hate it. I didn't think it was like the worst thing in the world, or like, oh my god, this sucks so much. But it's just kind of like, oh yeah, I wish it was better.
There's a lot of build up.
Yeah.
There's a lot of build up to it. It's just okay. No, perfectly told. It's a lot frustrating. It's always frustrating when something can be more than what it is, and
Yeah.
I think like the first little chunk of the movie, I thought this is okay set up. The characters aren't that likable. But they're not that unlikable either. I mean, Ben gets a little bit unlikable more as it goes, just because he's a bit too generic YouTuber dude. But
Yeah.
it's just kind of fine. It's just this typical setup for this type of movie where they're going somewhere, and eventually it's going to be spooky. Once they actually go underwater, though, it kind of like the uniqueness of the premise and the setting kind of like really started to shine, and like them creeping around the house, some of the not so much the later stuff, but there's like more overt things happening in front of them. But some of the earlier creepy stuff where it's just like, a little bit of movement there, a little silhouette here, maybe a little bit of that, creeping around the corner, like all that stuff is actually really effective. And I think I was like, okay, I like that this is restrained, it's not too quick cuts, it's not too shaky cam, all that stuff. And I think the sort of the teases of what the story of the house is, what the history of the house is, it was giving me a little bit of that survival horror vibe of like what went on here, like who were this family, what were they doing, and these creepy photos, and why is there this on the wall, and stuff like that. That I was feeling, and it wasn't super original if you took out the water. But because it's all underwater, all of it feels kind of fresh and just has a different look and feels different. And you have the timer element of they only have so much oxygen. They're extra vulnerable because of this. And
I forgot to mention, you brought that up, but I actually really like that element. It's kind of a, like how we say always like that there's rules, and I mean, I guess it's not really like a rule, but it kind of, it kind of is that it's like, okay, you only have so much time to be down here, and there's like a ticking clock that, it kind of instantly adds some like suspense.
Yeah. Sadly though, I think once it gets to the last like 20-30 minutes, it goes like more generic, I would say. And I think once you have more overt supernatural stuff happening in front of them, I don't think it's a spoiler to say there's ghosts. Like once you start seeing that just happen in front of them, it kind of loses a lot of its charm. And I would say that the plot sounds really interesting when they're setting things up, but then there's almost nothing else to explain. It's just exactly what you thought it was the second you saw anything. And from there it just kind of like, it goes through its paces. And I feel like the ending, sort of the final minute of the film, I feel like it's actually relatively well done visually, and in terms of what it is nice and simple. I feel like the movie didn't do enough to kind of set up what was happening in the scene. There's like one throwaway line earlier on that kind of explains maybe what's happening here, but beyond maybe just another broad idea. But I felt like it just like, you should have really set this, like just you should have really hammered this home, this idea that this was a risk, because I was thinking about it as it was happening, and I was like, maybe there should be more of this, a bit more to this. I don't know. I think what's a shame about it is that, once it does get going and we start getting a lot more shaky camera, we start getting a lot more quick cuts, it does start to feel like it just falls prey to all of the typical like haunted house stuff / found footage problems. Its unique setting really like makes a good 20-30 minutes when they first they're not even as soon as they go into water, but when they first get to the house, right, when they go down to the house, there's about 20-30 minutes there that feel really kind of unique and almost special. Maybe not like maybe the direction's not good enough to feel special necessarily, but almost like it's such a nice vibe and different, and it makes everything feel fresh for a while, and then it just kind of goes down the same rabbit holes as these movies normally do, with some tropes, with some generic moments, all the usual stuff.
And like you kind of compared it to survival horror, which is definitely getting those vibes. And I really like, in the beginning when they're first exploring the house, it does feel like when you're in the, survival horror game, you get to like a new area, and, it's usually like, that's kind of like the creepiest part when you're just exploring and you don't know if something's going to jump out at you. And, there's just all this creepy imagery. And then like, you turn your head and all of a sudden there's like a floating doll or whatever. And it's like, oh yeah, that's like, it's not going to come out and attack you or anything, but it's just like kind of creepy seeing all this stuff around. And that stuff was really cool. But like you said, it kind of just devolves into the usual stuff, which, I mean, if this didn't have the benefit of being underwater, this would just be like the most mediocre, like, kind of generic movie you've seen before. I did feel like it got really repetitive. Like, the house feels very small, and it feels like there's a lot of backtracking. Like, oh, we're in the basement. Like, oh no, something's scary. Let's get out of here. And then it's like, oh wait, like, we're stuck. Let's go back down to the basement. It's like, oh no, like it's scary again. Let's get out of here. And it's like, I feel like they just kind of kept going back and forth between like, just these couple of rooms, which, I mean, I guess it's not supposed to be a big house, and there's probably limitations to, so much you can do and build underwater or whatever. So I get it, but I don't know. It just ended up feeling like kind of repetitive to me.
Yeah, I'm kind of mixed on that. Like on the one hand, I appreciate that there's recognizable location. Like I always do when they're in the dining room because of the candles and the piano and the big window. Like I always appreciated recognizing places. So it wasn't just like a mess of locations. Like I understood some of the geography, which was kind of nice. But at the same time, you're right that there's a lot of up and down from the basement where a lot of the creepy stuff is. So it's just like, up we go, down we go, blah blah blah. Like back and forth. I almost wish it wasn't as supernatural as it is. Like I think, I think I like the idea of. I mean, sure. I'm not saying there shouldn't be anything supernatural. I'm not saying there shouldn't be anything ghostly, but.
What if like it was a slasher where there's just another scuba diver, but he's wearing like a hockey mask or something?
I want that movie now, Tim. You've offered me an idea that I now want to happen. No, I like. It does some. I don't want to say Blair Witch things. That's maybe a bit far fetched, but like it does that sort of thing where it's like, oh, there's just like a force keeping them here. There's like something against them, and it starts to feel kind of hopeless. And I almost wish it was more. Like it takes these shortcuts that in horror movies they do, which you think, oh, this is super creepy because of some sort of force that's keeping them down here, and it's hopeless, but. As soon as that starts to happen, I feel like, okay, well, they don't really have any real chance. At this point, we're just going through a haunted house ride, as it were, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I was actually a little intrigued by the mystery it was setting up in the backstory of the house, that when it turned out to be, like, there was almost nothing more to it. It was just, this was happening, but there was no, like, greater idea or reason or... I don't know. I guess I was just looking for some extra spark by the end in the story, and it just never really had it. It never revealed any new element that made me go, ooh.
It's like they came up with this great concept, but then felt like that was enough. Like, all right, we don't have to, make a story that's worthy or matches this. We can just kind of come up with whatever, and then, the concept is good enough that'll sell it.
Yeah, and honestly, like the character dynamics between the couple who. It's the same thing you've seen a million times in horror movies. You have the guy who's the one who's determined to get into these like ideas, these places. It's all sort of his thing, and she's dragged along, and she's fairly supportive. But she clearly, the opening scene where they're doing like the house in the Ukraine or whatever, like that's there to establish that he will like play a little prank on her and scare her, that she gets a little creeped out, and he's kind of insensitive about it, and maybe even a little bit of a jerk. And the idea being that, okay, well, that's kind of going to be her downfall then, is that he's going to like drag her into this situation, and it's kind of his fault. He's been, and it's almost like maybe if the movie had something to say, but I never really felt like I got a message or I got like a theme that kind of paid off because all this setup. It was just it was just a continual thing. So when stuff starts happening, it does the thing where she's seeing some stuff and he's not. So she's like, hey, I'm seeing these creepy things, we should get out of here. And he's like, no, let's just a couple more minutes, let's do a few more rooms, let me get a few more shots. And he's just kind of and it's just a little bit of that disconnect. It's like, so it falls into too many genre trappings, I think, and doesn't do enough. Which, and I think if it kept it, like, sometimes I would say if it keeps it simple, like, the setting would be enough to carry it. And I think if the back half was, like, really well directed, I'd maybe, like, say that. I'd maybe say, well, all the moments are so effective in how they're shot and the creepy, unique, like, scares of, like, something like coming through water, or all the, like, it feels like there could have been more ways to use the fact that they're underwater to do more unique scenarios and scares. But ultimately, like, we have there's a scene in this movie where someone hides under a bed, and I'm like, just because it's underwater doesn't change the fact that they're just hiding under the bed. Like, you've seen this a million times. So, that stuff's a little bit of a shame. So, yeah. I mean, it's not the worst thing. Like you say, it's like 82 minutes or something like that. It goes in fairly quick. The unique spell in the middle where it does feel kind of fresh because of its setting does feel cool, because I also like aquatic horror when it's done well, which doesn't really feel like it's that often. So
yeah, unfortunately.
And part of that is because it costs a lot to do underwater stuff, so not a lot of attempts are made. It tends to be few and far between. So
come on, Cameron, come back to horror.
Hey, you don't know, maybe like, he liked to change the genre for the second Alien movie. Maybe like Avatar 3 is going to be like the hardcore horror version of Avatar.
I'd be into it.
Yeah.
I did recently watch Piranha 2 for the first time, which I mean, I don't think he really owns up to.
Yeah, it's not really
considering that one of his movies, but it's actually not that bad. It's entertaining.
I've seen Piranha 1, but I've never.
I think we did on the show.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think we did. Maybe we should do Piranha 2 someday then. Maybe when Avatar 2 is coming out, we can tie in with Piranha 2.
Yeah.
That's his horror movie.
Actually, it's not a bad idea. Yeah.
It's even a 2.
Yeah.
We'll do Avatar on Ace, and then on Screams we'll do Piranha 2. There you go.
We'll do the real winner.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I thought they were going to play more with because they've got a drone that's following them, and they kind of set up that it malfunctions a bit here or there. I thought they were going to do more with that, or more with it like being taken somewhere, or maybe capturing something that they watch on the little screens on their wrists, and I don't know. Yeah,
honestly, I feel like there are stretches where I just forgot the drone was there.
As well,
it was kind of.
On you go.
I mean, I think the drone itself did end up being kind of creepy.
Oh yeah, it's got that red light on it, so it's got this sort of ominous presence at times. Because that was the thing, because the drone's got like a motion sensor on it, so it's almost exactly like Aliens. Actually, there's the little triangle of like the radius and like the little dot when something moves. And it almost made me wish that there was just more of like a direct physical threat, like a monster or something that was like. They could adhere more to some rules because it's physically a thing, as opposed to, it's supernatural bollocks where anything could just happen and there doesn't have to be any explanation or rules or whatever. Stuff can just happen at random when the script demands it, to stop them from getting out or to whatever.
Yeah. Hey, you make it a killer mermaid movie. Just have a mermaid stalking them.
Yeah, there was a brief moment I was like, I hope they were experimenting on like people and like what's down here is actually the mutated like person from like 50 years ago or something. Like, I was
pretty cool. Yeah,
I was hoping for something like that, because the house, like, they mentioned that it's been underwater since the 70s, so it's been down here for a while. And one of the key plot points early on is that like it's a little too preserved for a house that's been underwater for that long. Like all the fabric's still intact, and like it doesn't make any sense that it looks this good still.
Yeah, well, it was like newspaper clippings, and like you can pick up a book and flip through it, which I feel like wouldn't that stuff kind of like deteriorate like quickly? But I would think so too. But again, supernatural bollocks, so they just kind of get away with it. So yeah, so that does feel a little bit lazy, and it's one of those things where I'm like, you're making this cool movie with this cool concept of the haunted spooky house underwater, and like you're just like
reverting to standard tropes. Like, wouldn't you be inspired? Wouldn't you want to, like, no, this is a chance to make a movie that's going to be a big deal that people are going to remember, even if it's not like a big hit at the theaters. Like, people will find this and it'll be like a cult hit because it does cool things with a premise that's this unique. And sadly, it doesn't. Sadly, by the end, it's like, just the same old shtick.
I mean, Epix was missing out. This could have been their, Snyder Cut Justice League. Like, they could have got millions of subscribers.
I mean, with the hoops you had to jump through, I'm not sure if millions of people would have made it, even if they wanted to. But let's get back at the movie then. So, spoilers for Silent... sorry. That different movie. It's so confusing that a movie called Silent House and Deep House both came out like in the span of months of each other. We will get to Silent House in the near future. Don't worry. It's on the list. It's on the to-do list.
Do I even know Silent House? What? I can't think of what that is. Or do you mean Night House?
I'm thinking Night House. There's a movie called Silent House though, but I think it's from like years ago.
It's silent but deadly.
Was it? I might say it's like 2010. There's a movie called Silent House.
Sounds about right. Was that the one with, was it like Jennifer Lawrence or something?
No, you're thinking The House at the End of the Street or something like that.
That's it.
Yeah.
A lot of houses in horror movies.
There is The Last House on the Left, being the predecessor of the House movies.
And what's that new? There's like a new one on Netflix with what's that the girl? What's Veronica Mars? What's her name?
Kristen Bell?
Yeah. Doesn't she have a new one that's like the girl in the window watching me from the other side of the street or something like that?
I think that's a satire, because that's like making fun of like thrillers. Because there's the movie The Girl in the Train, The Woman in the Window. Blah, blah, blah. Like, I guess maybe. I don't think that's like more of a comedy that's making fun of thrillers and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. But yes. Also, a house in that. Houses are pretty common buildings after all, so we tend to get a lot of.
Well, like the Deep apartment doesn't have as much of a ring to it.
No.
Although I don't know if it's like the best SEO, because I did like look at Deep House, and I guess that's a genre of music.
News to me.
It's like I just typed it into Google and everything was like, oh yeah, it sounds like club music or something, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I think I've heard the music being referred to as house music, which I think might be like club music, so I guess that's not surprising. I guess Deep is just bassier.
It's like when you're like really into the house.
Yes.
It's like you're not in the foyer. You're in the living room. Your shoes are off.
They should have called this The Last House on the Lake. No, Last House in the Lake.
That's pretty good. I like that.
There you go. Fix the title. No, the title's bad. The title's fine, but
yeah, I actually do like the title, but yeah.
So yeah, spoilers from this point on for The Deep House. So the movie, it starts with like our example of them going through like an old building. I don't know if it was like a school or an orphanage or something like that, but it was like a big building. I will say that for a movie that's 80 to maybe 85 minutes, I felt a lot of like movie logos and then a lot of like just like slow titles on black text at the start. I was like, man, you're really milking this time. Like this, we've only got 80 minutes and you're kind of padding this out at the start. But it sets up that they're going somewhere underwater because she, Tina, the lady that is like practicing holding her breath, and she looks at her timer and she's only done it for like a minute and a half, which I'm not saying I could do any better because I don't practice. I've not swam in ages, but like for a movie where someone's going to have to dramatically hold their breath, that is quite short, because typically it's like because movies will like to remind you like people can do it for 7 minutes, like the people who really train to do it can do it for 7 minutes. So she lies and says 3 minutes, and it never really comes up except for the fact that ultimately at the very end, she's going to struggle to hold her breath, but like it never comes up that like she lied to him about it. It never really comes up that she's practicing. Like I feel like you have to do like rule of thirds, rule of thirds is a movie thing. It has to come up again in the middle somewhere and sort of like reestablish the problem that she's scared of like holding her breath or something. But it is what it is. but yeah, they go driving and they're looking for this lake. They get to this desolate town. They kind of foreshadow like all the missing children that's going to get brought up in the house because there's like a statue, and they assume it's like a war memorial or something because it's got like a bunch of names of people who died, and but they go to the lake and it's like a touristy spot. There's people there. There's like lifeguards. There's people in jet skis and whatever. And he's like, "This is shit. This is not creepy. We can't do anything with this." But luckily for them, there's a creepy dude named Pierre who is like, "I know of a super secluded spot at somewhere else in the lake." Oui, oui. I can't do a French accent, so that's the best you get.
I guess we didn't mention it, but I guess technically this is a French film.
Yeah, I think it's French funded, so technically it's French. But it's all, other than a few moments where, because Tina's French and she'll speak to Pierre in a couple of like scenes in French. Like it's mostly in English because Ben is English, so there's like just mostly English dialogue. So so I guess it counts as a foreign film if you want to tick it off that in your records, but it feels like an easy one to tick off.
Yeah.
Not that it's a competition to watch the most subtitled movies are in, but it just feels a bit weird. So yeah, Pierre's a bit creepy. He's driving with them to get to this secluded spot. They have to walk through the forest a little bit to get to this part of the lake, and he just generally stares at her a little. It makes her uncomfortable. She mentioned as soon as they go underwater and they've got like their comms on to talk to each other, the first thing she says is, "That guy's creeping me out."
Yeah.
He keeps staring at me, and I felt like that. I mean, do you know what? It's probably one of the most unlikable things about Ben is that he is completely oblivious to this creepy man staring at his girlfriend in the van, and then just not like kind of like listening. Like he just kind of cracks a joke about him stealing the van. He doesn't really kind of like say, "Oh, I'm sorry you feel uncomfortable. I'll do my best." Like instead, she's like, "You're riding up front with him on the way back," and he's like, "Yeah, okay." like he doesn't really acknowledge her concerns all that much. And the movie's making it very clear. The movie's focusing on his glances, his staring, her uncomfortable smile, trying to kind of like play it off as like it's not bothering her. So it's just like, see, Ben, you look a prick now. The movie's making you look like a prick because you're not acknowledging any of this. And it's not like it's that subtle or concealed. So
yeah.
I
mean, I think anytime, like, I don't know, if you're with your partner and you're bringing this like weird strange Frenchman into the mix, like I feel like most people would be a little bit on edge, but like you said, he's just very oblivious to it.
Yeah, and that's the thing, he feels like he's leading them to this place. So later in the movie, when plot twist, he's the surviving son of the creepy ass family who lived in this house once upon a time. It's like it's like a wet fart. It's like this is not a shock. This is not really a twist. It's like, if anything, I'm just disappointed that this is like what he was, because it's just so generic.
And it's also, it just feels kind of inconsequential because we haven't seen him the rest of the movie. It's not like he pops up again. It's not like we really...
Someone didn't watch the post-credit sequence.
I did not know. It was really, well, I mean, not like super late, but it was late for me by the time I was done, so I stopped.
I mean, I'll say it right now. The post-credit scene is pointless. It's two women who are standing looking at the lake, and then the camera spins round and he's also there. So he's led more people here. That's it. It's just telling you he does this frequently.
Okay.
That's it.
Yeah, and I guess one thing that's kind of weird is it seems a little strange that, again, like I mean, I'm sure there are like places where there are like kind of buildings and stuff underground because places get flooded or whatever, but still it seems like something that you wouldn't really run into that often, and it feels very unique. And again, which is one of the reasons why this premise was so kind of interesting. So it feels a little strange that like they go to visit this one underwater place, but it's too crowded, but then there just happens to be another underwater place that they could go to. Like, all right, is there just like, is every lake in France just have like all these places underwater?
I guess this one area does, like. I mean, I think there's a couple of lines explaining why this area got flooded but they don't like elaborate. It doesn't get brought up enough that I really remember the details, to be honest.
I think it was something like, well, we had to flood it because if not, there would have been more flooding.
Yes, it was to avoid flooding most of the town, so this part of the town got flooded instead, intentionally. Yes.
When you say this part of the town, you mean this one house?
No, because they mentioned that the actual main part of the lake where all the tourists have stuff under that water as well.
That's true, yeah.
They mentioned that, so there's at least like a section. Although this house felt quite far away from the rest of the lake, to be honest. Like, they drive and then walk for a bit, so it's... Yeah. It's a big lake.
Yeah, I mean, well, we all know Paris Lake, that famous lake.
Paris Lake. I don't get a lot of lakes in the middle of a big city, to be honest. It tends to be more of a rural thing.
Sure.
Although rivers go through big cities a lot, that's quite common.
Yeah,
that's quite common. Not in LA, obviously. I mean, you technically have a river, but it's just this dry concrete canal.
It's very depressing.
There's nothing there.
Anytime I drive over and I was looking like, oh.
No, I mean, this was literally like a thing years ago. Talking to an American, and I was trying to describe because I've recognized it in multiple movies, the LA River, and I was trying to describe, and it was like, "What do you mean the river?" And I'm like, "What do you mean the river? It's not a river. There's no water." Like I had to be taught that this was the LA River because it's just a concrete hole. Famously in Terminator 2, the truck chase, probably the most big example, but it's been used in many movies. Hell, even Arnold used it again in Last Action Hero, if I remember right. So, yeah. So they get to the house. There's some nice shots of the house as they approach and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, as they're kind of going to it, there's a lot of stuff that I thought might be, like you're saying before, the rule of thirds and whatnot. Like, I feel like there are things that are setting up on their way there that would come into play or kind of happen again in the house, but not really. Like, there's a scene where it plays music and he plays this loud rock music and it makes all the fish swim away. I was like, okay, maybe that'll be something that they'll do later. It'll come on by itself, or he'll play it to
distract,
distract the monsters or whatever. But yeah, that didn't really happen. Then she gets her flipper caught on a stick or something. I was like, okay, so she'll probably get her flipper caught on something in the house, and I guess she does kind of get caught up in
not
the
this way, because her flipper gets impaled on a branch or something that's underwater, and he has to go and pull it off. And I'm like, yeah, it feels like it's setting things up. And the thing with the music as well, maybe it just be a case of, maybe she's getting swarmed by fish and he has to get rid of them. So they've learned at this point in the movie, they've learned that if he plays the loud rock music, they'll scatter. So they'll use that as it's setting up a rule, and then they use that rule later, but they don't. It doesn't come up. You hear a couple of weird noises on it at points, but that's kind of about it. And even the motion tracker is not really used. You see it once, and they mention, there's no movement. We're alone here, and then maybe it's just because I'm so used to Aliens and how much it keeps using the motion tracker to build suspense that it feels like a waste.
Yeah.
To have it and then not really do anything with it. What I did like though is, so they get to the house, they get inside, and they're creeping around, and they're seeing photos on the wall. They're discovering the dining room with the big piano and the glass, the big glass window. But they notice some creepy things, right? They notice that there's posters on the wall. It's missing children posters. So immediately okay, so this family were kidnapping kids, and this is this is a greatest hits for them. And there's a really good scene where they go into a kid's bedroom, and Ben sees a silhouette behind the curtain, and there's just details around. And I think one of the other things that I really like when they do actually eventually go into the basement, which has got a big crucifix on the door.
Yeah.
But when they go down to the basement and they find a room that has old cameras and lots of 8mm film, and I thought, this is really neat. I kind of like this idea that it's kind of playing with the idea that these people who were here also documented things in their own time, and there's probably a lot of creepy stuff on here. Obviously, we do actually get to see some of it a little bit later because of spooky stuff, but obviously we're not really going to get to see any of it because we're underwater, and it doesn't feel like we're going to leave the water and come back later to go and like maybe try and rescue this film so we can look at it. But it's some interesting details, like, and I think these details and the slow creeping around and finding them is definitely my favorite part of the movie. Like, it's definitely the time I was into the story the most. No question. So, but when they get into the main part of the basement, though, they find like these chains, and it's like above like a satanic symbol on the floor, and on the chains there are two people like sort of hanging, and they're far more preserved, and they should be, as she points out, they should be skeletons by now, because it's been like 40 to 50 years since this place went underwater. And they've got like these masks on them, they're like torture masks, and it's like, okay, this is all very creepy. I think the concern I had at this point, though, was like, I can see the generic scene where these dead people's eyes are going to open. Yep. And like, and and unfortunately, I don't know, I didn't really like the like the look of it. Like, yeah, they have these masks, but it's like I don't know, they look kind of like, I don't know, like one kind of looked like or maybe it was like a gas mask or something, and I don't know, the other I forget, but just kind of looked like, I don't know, some kind of like leathery, I don't know, like S&M mask or something. But like, I don't know, like, it didn't really look like creepy. Like, it just looked like a little generic. Like, if you are like in a fun house or something, like, yeah, just put like, some leather spiky mask on someone and have them jump out at you. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I think it was it was the finding the bodies hanging there and the satanic symbol on the floor that kind of was my first like, I don't know if I like where this is kind of leading now. Like, I was into the mystery up to a point, and like I was thinking, okay, it's just a sick family who did a lot of bad things, and that's where maybe the supernatural, vengeful ghost or whatever it is going to come from, or whatever. I mean, I would have preferred a monster. I think a more like tangible threat would have been nice, because I think the part of the movie where it started to kind of lose me is when they leave here, they get freaked out, they want to go, and when they go back up to the window they came in at, there's now a brick wall like right outside the window, and they can't leave, and it's like, okay, so we're just doing the supernatural stuff can affect anything at any time just for the sake of the story. And it takes me, I'm not saying there's not some movies that do it well and make me feel this sense of like existential dread because things can just happen, but for the most part it just makes me go, oh, so there's no rules then, and therefore I can't get invested in the reasons that they should have, like the avenues they should have to get out. Like, it'd have been much more interesting if, say, they tried to, at the room where the window's in, they tried to go in and there's something there waiting for them, like a ghost, a monster, whatever it is, and they're blocked because there's something they have to get past. And that's cool because then there's an obstacle, and then it's like, okay, is there a way we can figure out how to get past this obstacle? And that'd be cool,
Now, see, I kind of like it when, like, I don't know, like a house has powers and it can mess with you. Like, I do agree, like, most of the time it's not done well. Like, you really, have to, like really have some skill into kind of pulling that off. I actually just read a comic book, which I enjoyed quite a bit, called The House, which is a pretty simple, like, World War II ghost story where these, soldiers are kind of retreating and they stumble upon this house in the middle of the woods, and they go in there, and it is very much that kind of demon-y possessed house where you go, you go outside the window and you're right back in the house, and it's playing all these kind of mind games with you. And honestly, like, that stuff, I don't know, I feel like I'm kind of a mark for that stuff. I like it, but yeah, just most of the time it's not done well. And with this, I don't know, I feel like they don't really do enough with it, like, because it's mostly just like, okay, the window's now bricked up. I was like, all right, that's not bad, but what else can we do? And there isn't really much else other than just being like, oh, we just can't escape. But like, show other visual interesting ways to convey that.
I guess when they eventually figure out that maybe they can get out through the chimney, there's kind of a moment where I guess it kind of like intervenes and like stops them, right? But all you really see is like their POV shaking and going dark because it's just this underwater camera, freaking out. And it's not that visually interesting. You can't really see anything that's going on at that point, and that's one of the big problems, is that after like the halfway mark, give or take, whenever something crazy does start happening, it tends to be just a lot of shaking of the camera. And there's a moment where they're back down in the basement thinking there might be like a trap way of getting out, and there's like a scene where she starts to like get like tangled up in the chains, and it's like they're sort of attacking her and like it does slash her leg, I think, at one point. But then like he comes back in the room, and like the chains are all fine, and she claims that the bodies disappeared, and they did disappear because we could see that they were gone, but they're back now. And Tim's cat is determined to say things into the mic.
I mean, cat house.
Cat house, yes.
Yeah, and then I mean, not to skip too far ahead, but like eventually Tina, I mean, she does escape, so I don't know why, like, I guess that one kind of hole that leads outside, like the house can't affect it or whatever.
Well, it's like a. I mean, there's not really much to talk about in the middle, because that's the thing. Like, it's just them trying to get out, looking around. Some creepy stuff happens. Eventually, the ghosts just wake up and start chasing them around.
He just like takes off their mask, which I don't know if, like, if they wouldn't have done anything if the mask hadn't come off, but.
Yeah, I don't know, but like they end up like she finds like an entrance once they get split up, because they try to go through the chimney and they get separated. He gets trapped in the bedroom and he hides under the bed, but the ghost gets him, and then from that point on, it's like he's possessed, like he's wanting the ghost to take over with them. When she finds him,
and it does that kind of annoying thing where like she never really seems to. I mean, granted, it's a very weird situation, so maybe she's not thinking clearly, but she never really seems to acknowledge that he's acting like weird as hell. Yeah,
and it's not even he's even being subtle. He's just outright saying things like, "We're going to die down here."
Yeah. There's no use worrying. We'll become one with the house now.
Yeah, like
it's like, oh, Ben, don't say that. Let's try.
Yeah, and so when she eventually finds them, she has this scene where like a snake, like a little like water snake's inside her suit, and like we see it inside her mask, and she has to take off her mask to get it out. But
which, like, that comes out of nowhere.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. She leads them to like a place she found where there might be like an exit, and when he tries to like attack her, she stabs him in the shoulder, which seems to cure him of the possession, and he's back to being normal. But then the ghost like girl just like comes up and stabs him anyway and kills him like right there. And I'm like, okay. And so then like the end of the movie is her just like narrowly escaping. She gets out, but there's no oxygen left, and they've been reminding us throughout the movie, to be fair, that the oxygen's like ticking down, and she's got like none left. So she takes off the oxygen, she swims out into the ocean, and she's basically just swimming as fast as she can. This is the end of the movie to get to the surface. And earlier in the film, there's a line from him where he says that we have to like breathe a bit slower. You're using up too much. We have to make sure we have enough left so that we can stop on our ascent, right? And I don't know the specifics or what the safe amounts are or anything like that, but yeah, it's the thing. Like, I've heard it certainly in movies where there's like submarines and like anyone goes like deep sea stuff, that
it's the bends or whatever they call it.
Yeah, like when you're coming back up, like I know when you're in like a submarine, you have to spend like like an hour like coming up. You can't just like zoom up because your lungs will just like go or whatever. Like I mean, I'm not an expert here, but it's a thing, right? And they make a point of him saying, we have to like stop on our way up. We can't just swim up to the top like as quick as possible. So in this final sequence, when she's just swimming as fast, and don't get me wrong, the wide shot that it pulls back to of her swimming away from the house looks great, right? It's a nice shot. Yeah. It's a really beautiful visual. And it's the idea that she's getting close and close, and maybe she's just running out of breath. Maybe she's just not holding her breath long enough. Or maybe it's this kicking in. She's ascending too fast. She's not letting herself decompress. Whatever it may be, but she dies. At the end of the movie, she dies like before she can get to the surface. But she seems quite close because we can see the sun coming through the water, and it's this kind of sad, like depressing ending, and then like cut to credits. Right, that's the end of the movie, and I have no problem with that being the end of the movie. But I feel like the struggle of her getting up there, I think you had to reestablish halfway through the movie. Again, rule of thirds. There should have been another scene where maybe she admitted to him, I only held my breath for a minute and a half. Reestablish that idea. And also, if this decompression problem is a thing as well, are you going to use that? If that's really what's happening here at the end, then really hit that home, like have them repeat it and say, make sure when you're going up you don't do this because it will kill you, or something.
I didn't even remember that until you mentioned it, that they did. I guess I did say that. So yeah, it wasn't like they if that's what they were trying to imply, I should have hit it.
And I have no idea if this is deep enough that that's an issue, because I don't know.
Deep enough.
Like, are they actually deep enough in the water that is that much of an issue?
Oh, that's true. Yeah, you know, and yeah, because it didn't feel like they were super deep, but I mean, who knows? Maybe they are. But I'll tell you what, I did not like this ending. I mean, I do agree, like you said, like that kind of last final shot did look really well. Like, I'll give it credit for that. But to me, it's kind of like, this whole movie, it's them versus the house.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mind a bleak ending. Like, if you want the characters to die, that's fine. But I don't like it to kind of be like this technicality where, oh yeah, they escaped the house, but then like, they ran out of oxygen, or they went up too fast or something. Like, if they're gonna die and have like kind of a, bleak, depressing ending or whatever, I want it because, the house gets like one last thing in, and it's like, maybe she gets to the top, but then she can't break the surface because, she's actually still in the house and is, like a trick or something like that. Or
that sounds awful.
No, that makes much more sense. Like, it's stupid that they escape, but then because of a technicality they die. Like, I don't like that.
Well, here's the thing. I'd
be like if in Jurassic Park they escape the dinosaur island, but then as they're flying home, the helicopter's like, oh no, we're out of fuel, and then they crash and die. That's stupid.
I agree to an extent, but I have no problem with this idea of almost escaping, but like her own like limitations that she couldn't overcome or her undoing, right? I have no problem with that as long as it is the punctuation on like a story or a plot thread that the movie's had. So if it said something, right? Because this is the thing. I got to the end of the movie and I was like, is there something I'm not getting here about the themes of the characters? Because it doesn't have much impact, because it doesn't feel like if she made the wrong choice and that was kind of the tragedy of the story and that was her downfall at the end, then that would be something. That would be like, okay, this ending where she doesn't quite get out has a point, it has a purpose, and it's saying something about the character that she didn't learn from something earlier on, or she, like her boyfriend and her caring about him was her undoing or something. But I don't feel like the end of the movie says anything. It's just like, no, we set up that she can't hold her breath very long, so there you go, she doesn't survive at the end. Because you only brought it up once, if anything, it reads to me like, okay, it's there to build tension that she might not make it at the end, so it'll feel like, okay, she's achieved something when her head pops out of the water, when she does make it, right? Because you've set up that she struggled to hold her breath. But here at the end, her determination, she's able to just do it, and that builds up. Whereas if you did the rule of thirds and you had it a second time and you had her like maybe tie it in thematically to something, then her not being able to do it at the end would feel like maybe it would have a point. It would have like a, oh, I don't know. Like, this is the thing. There isn't one, so I'm struggling to think of what it would be. But
well, what the problem is if they do that, then that might bump the movie up to like 87 minutes, and that's just who has the attention span for that?
Yeah, it's just. It feels, for a movie that's called Deep House, it feels a very shallow plot.
Good job.
Yeah, I know. I'm a man of many talents. No, it just like I really was searching for like something that was saying, for something that it was. I mean, I say I don't mean like a moral, just something that was saying about the character.
I thought we all were. I thought we all agreed that this movie is a metaphor for capitalism.
Oh. But yeah, it really isn't, and it's quite sad. I mean, I sort of glossed over the secret hidey hole she finds that lets her like escape is behind, like, there's like a room, because the lights come on in the house eventually, again, because supernatural stuff, and it plays like some of the film footage that they have of them, like, like killing kids and like kidnapping them and like taking body parts like apart and stuff.
Don't film your crimes. Come on.
This is a silly move.
Yeah.
But it's kind of creepy. It's playing this old film footage underwater, whatever. It's fine. And luckily, the boyfriend, because he's possessed at this point, is just like telling her the backstory, which again was really dull because it was like all the creepy teasing of seeing the wanted posters, the missing kids posters, and seeing like the evidence of like what was going on. That was interesting. Having him just go, yes, and Pierre is the son of the family, and he escaped. Like and I'm like, there was a camera filming like when the angry townsfolk came. It's actually very Freddy Krueger. Like basically they got killed in their house because like all the parents of these kids who were kidnapped said, screw this, we're going to murder these assholes.
Yeah, it was super generic. And then were they I just watched this yesterday, but I forget. Like they were like sacrificing the kids. Like there was a demonic thing they're saying.
They were saying they were a gift. It was they were a gift to something, but it never goes beyond that, right? It never goes beyond that. It never establishes how Pierre knows that the ghosts of his family will still do this if he sends them. Maybe he deep dived himself. Maybe he dove down himself and he spoke to the ghosts. I don't know.
What do they? Yeah, they need more sacrifices or something. But why? Like how? Like. What's that doing for them now that they're dead? What does it do for Pierre?
I assume Pierre's reaping all the benefits because he's the only one alive.
It's kind of annoying. And I guess because like the premise is very unique and stuff. Like, I mean, maybe you don't need like a super original detailed backstory or whatever, but like it would have been much better presented, like you said, just kind of through what they're finding and going through the house, because you know. Surprise, you kind of get that there's like some messed up stuff happening, that there's some messed up kids happening. Then just having the possessed character do this like speech at the end, it just felt like just an info dump out of nowhere. It wasn't very interesting.
It was unsatisfying, to say the least. I mean, and I feel like you could do two things. So I think we've focused on making the plot and the mystery more interesting and more satisfying. But alternatively, you could make it more about, okay, like maybe the victims are the important part. Like maybe they're attracted here because of the type of people they are. Maybe it's saying that these types of people get themselves into trouble, and like almost like a Silent Hill type thing where they're drawn to this type of place because of things they've done, or so. Maybe the characters are the important part, but the characters are basically wafer thin, and the only thing we really have is that she gets a bit more scared. She's scared to go in the water a little bit, and he's like, "No, just do it. It'll be fine. I promise." And then that's it. Like that's the characters in a nutshell. So, yeah. It's a shame. It's a shame because like there's enough cool stuff like in the premise early on that you're kind of like, oh, okay, I could as long as the rest of this is like fun and like well directed, like I could come out of this quite happy. And sadly, it just it goes down. It goes down.
I did kind of like whenever like I don't know if they're more like ghosts or actual like reanimated dead bodies that are moving around, but I did like whenever you would see any of like the spirits or whatever kind of chasing them towards the house. I did think it looked kind of effective, because just seeing that's what they're all like decked out in their scuba gear, but then just seeing like it's not like they looked like that crazy or whatever. They just kind of looked like regular people, but they just have these kind of very like kind of like solemn faces on, and the way they kind of just slowly swimming towards you, I thought that was like kind of creepy a few times.
Yeah, I feel like it was better when they were just sort of standing still in the background or something. Like,
sure, yeah.
Once you have people just sort of chasing you, it's like, I know it's underwater and it's kind of dark and all these things, but like it's still just like it's still just a person kind of like going, ooh,
yeah.
So it's a shame. I will say they did the smart thing of color coding their masks, so like his mask was blue and hers was yellow, I think, and it was just a nice simple thing that you always knew at a glance who you were looking at, because obviously they're in scuba gear, they're all in black, otherwise it'd be very easy to not like know for sure until you see like a good shot of their eyes or whatever. Actually, one little note on the performances. I think obviously all the dialogue, I presume, was recorded later, like in a studio, and added back in, because obviously it's all just over comms when they're in the scuba gear.
Yeah.
There's a couple of moments in the performances where I think the actors, while they were filming, overcompensated because they felt like, I mean, obviously they knew they were going to add the dialogue later, but they overcompensated because maybe they weren't hearing each other that well when they were in the water or whatever. But there's a moment, like when they're in the bedroom early on, there's a moment where Ben says to Tina, like, you know, basically look over here or something, but look at this thing. But when he does it, he does this thing where he sort of like does, like, you know, he points to his eyes, he goes, let's look over here, like he's doing sign language for someone who doesn't understand what he's saying, you know. He or in this case, it's like he's saying something to someone who can't hear him. So he's like really accentuating it and like really like basically for Rosette in the audience who might not hear what he's saying, he's making it visually very clear what he's trying to say to her. And I felt like you don't need to do this. Like, she can hear you fine. Like you've got like a fancy Iron Man style comm system going on between the two of you.
Yeah,
that's fine. So there's a few little moments like that where I felt the actors were maybe, how do I say, forgetting that they were going to have dialogue later that they were supposed to be able to hear, but yeah, they're just all disconnect.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Oh well, there you go. That's Deep House. I suppose you would like to rate the film, Timmy.
I'd love nothing more.
How deep will the score be?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little tough. Yeah, because I think I was kind of wavering between like a 5.5 and a 6. I think I'll give it just a little bit of an edge and just go a straight 6 because even though there's some pretty, you know, significant flaws and you know, it's pretty disappointing that you know, it doesn't live up to the premise. There's enough like uniqueness that, you know, I'm still glad that, you know, I got to check it out, and that, you know, there was like definitely moments that were cool or looked really nice. And you know, and it's even at some points where it was like a little slow, like it was never like a chore or anything to watch. So yeah, it's definitely a little frustrating that, you know, I had a lot of high hopes going in, and then unfortunately it didn't really live up to it. But I mean, I guess kudos, you know, for them for, you know, having an original idea and, you know, relatively pulling it off, like not going the extra mile, but, you know, hey, it definitely wasn't crap, which, you know, we've seen plenty of crap. So so yeah, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, and who knows, I mean, maybe I mean, maybe it was like super hard to shoot, so maybe it's even a gift that, you know, we got what we got. But hey, it is what it is.
Yeah, I feel like it's mostly just a mediocre script though, so I don't know if I can blame the restrictions of the water. It's not like I'm asking for more like action set pieces underwater, right? And I'm asking for I don't know. Anyway, I'll probably be a little harsher. I like I say, there is a section in the middle where they're first exploring the house where I'm like kind of into it, and the setting does give it some this unique vibe. But I am disappointed with, you know, how generic it feels in the back half, and it's not like the characters are that much to like, you know, propel it up the ladder either. So but it's not the worst characters, and it's not the worst like back half of a horror movie either. So it's the sort of thing where it maybe, if it wasn't for the water setting, it would maybe be like another full point lower or something like that. But I think as it is, I'll go probably 5.5 and call it there. But could have been so much more.
Yeah.
Alas.
Well, I mean, I swear, eventually we are going to get to some good 2021 movies.
Oh.
I mean, I hope at least.
You hope.
I don't think we've really raved about anything quite that much yet.
Well, it's not 2020, it was more 2020, but if you have a chance, you need to watch Saint Maud, Tim, because that was a Sacred Hockey Mask episode in the interim, and I highly recommend Saint Maud.
Okay.
I highly recommend Saint Maud. But yes. Yeah, so there you go. And I love how you're saying, oh, we'll eventually hit a good one. And we're pretty sure our next regular episode, we're looking to M. Night Shyamalan to save us, apparently, which I don't know how that's going to go. So we'll see. But look forward to that. But yeah, as mentioned, yeah, the bonus episodes are back for patrons. $1 or more per month over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. We did Werewolves Within. Those are one per month. But we also have even more screams, which the first one was, but did go out for free, so you can sample the first one, and those will be. I mean, the first one was actually quite long, but those will usually be like maybe like half an episode's length, and they'll be like on a topic, or just talking some random movies that we've watched in our free time, kind of thing. Next one of those will either be towards the end of the month or start of February, but yeah. So go check out Patreon if you want to support the content and the show and everything. You can also support us for free by liking, subscribing, dinging the bell for notifications on YouTube. In fact, I also cringed in the movie when Ben said, "Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment." I was like,
yeah.
I was like, don't do it. Like, it's just too real. It's too real. So. Yes, you can also support us on the audio platform if you give us a 5-star rating and a review. That helps out spread the show to more people. And of course, get us on Twitter at ScreamsMidnight and share us amongst your horror-loving friends. Please do.
Please.
And yes. And we have a lot of 2021 movies to catch up, but don't worry, we've not forgotten sequels to things that we have to get back to. We have several franchises on the go. We have more Leprechaun, we have more Hellraiser, we have more Hammer Dracula to get through, but
more Wreck, more Ginger Snaps.
We got those too, yes. Those feel a bit lighter though compared to these other big ones. I think I don't know. I mean, maybe what we'll do is just so that we definitely get through some of them. Maybe we'll do like a sequels only month. We'll take a break from the new stuff maybe in a few months and just be like, no, we'll do one of each of those. Or something.
Sounds fun.
Just to make sure we're sort of ticking away at them. But
tick tick tick.
Yeah, I misspoke. I didn't mean to say tick. I meant to say chipping away was what I was meant to say. But I said tick, and you seem to be excited by that, so you rolled with it. So
I like tick.
So there you
I
go.
like the tick.
That Screams After Midnight. I believe we're actually longer in the movie now at this point.
It's mostly my rant about finding it.
Yes, I mean it's too much for the title, but I really should title it something like a Deep House Review and the epic story of signing up for epics. But hey, honestly, it was probably the most interesting part of the review, so I don't feel bad. Don't feel bad, Timmy. So that is us. Thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, and we'll see you next time.
Don't you want me to do the pose?
The pose. Oh, the pose. Yeah, you need to pose for the screenshot. The thing. You're right. The thumbnail. All right, Timmy. Pose. 3, 2, 1. Pose. There you go. Perfect. Do you know what? The blue light of the mic hitting your hand gives it a blue tint. So that's just perfect.
It's on purpose.
Oh sure, yeah.
That's gonna happen.
I'm sure that was perfect. Oh, do you know what we've not done either? Not to add more segments here, but well, it's at the extreme ends of the IMDb reviews. And a bit.
And I don't think you thanked any patrons either.
Oh yeah, the patron producers. Oh, I'm all off at the end of this episode, aren't I? I'm forgetting all the segments. Thank you to Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, David Short, Boardnow, Christopher Moy, and David Brown. You beautiful bastards. I'm sorry I forgot. Yes. There are 11 one-star reviews on IMDb.
Oh, 1 star, come on.
Deep House. Yeah. I should have counted how many times she said Ben. So what's funny is before we started recording, and I just reminded us the name of the characters, I said I knew his name was Ben because she said it a lot. So
that's right.
I had no idea what her name was. I can never have told you her name. In fact, the review right above that is the title is Ben.
I feel like I wasn't thinking about it that much during the movie, but I'm probably won't rewatch this anytime soon, but if at some point I do, that'll probably be sticking in my mind.
There are, however, only there are only two 10-star reviews on IMDb for The Deep House. And the first one is 10 because of the concept.
I mean, it is a 10 out of 10 concept, I would say.
It was the best thing about the movie, but the concept alone isn't
yeah,
isn't
you
enough.
got to take in the execution as well.
Yeah, and then the other one just titled Great Concept. So they're really clinging to the concept in these 10-star reviews.
Did these people watch the movie? Honestly.
They watched the trailer and thought, that's enough.
Hey, great concept. I love it.
I'm going to praise it. So there you go. But there you go. I like seeing actually how many there is of 1 in 10s. It's a nice little comparison.
That is interesting, yeah.
Any movie. All right, there you go.
Not our show, though. Like, we don't want to look up the ratings on those.
Oh, no, of course not. No.
Well, actually, I wouldn't mind the 5-star ratings on those, but yeah, I'm good with the ones.
Oh, for sure, yeah. What's funny is YouTube made the dislikes private, like you don't see them publicly anymore. So
that's good.
I almost like the idea of like at the end of every episode, like, okay, last episode's dislike counter was this, you bastards. We can reveal exclusively. Oh dear. All right. Well, once again, thank you very much for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies. We'll see you underwater next time.